our fourth mysterious guest is here, who is going to talk about what the California Assembly is going to do with their poverty program. And we couldn't have picked a better person. And as a San Diego person, I almost said native. I wasn't quite born here. I told you about St. Louis. I'm particularly proud to introduce Toni Atkins.
Well, thank you. And I heard this was the Progressive Caucus, but I think outside I could tell it was the Rowdy Caucus. How is it when someone comes to ask someone to actually tone it down a little bit from one of the other rooms? I love that. I think we need more of that, particularly given the circumstances that we just come out of. I know we're talking about poverty, and I have quite a list of things I want to run through quickly and hopefully have a little bit of time for comments or questions. I'm sure you will have plenty of thoughts to share with me, but you know, this election cycle, this whole weekend is about saying we certainly managed to hold the line in California, which is different than the rest of the country. And so I'm thankful for that, but we still have lots of work to do. And at lunch, I talked a little bit, if you were there, about the intersection of politics and policy. And I believe as Democrats, you know, we do the politics because we care a great deal about the policies and the things that are implemented in our communities. And I just want to talk a little bit about some of the issues that are forefront in my mind. Some may be things you are on the front of your minds, but there may be some things I don't cover, but that's because there's a heck of a long list of things we should be working on. You know, this past September, the Public Policy Institute in California put out a report using the high cost of California living and basically said that half the children in California are poor or near poor. 25% live in poverty, and that means for a family of four about $30,000. Think about living on $30,000 in one of the places in California. We are one of the least affordable places to live in San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, and it doesn't fare much better in the rural parts of our state as well. So 25% live in poverty, 26% are near poor, and that's about $46,000 for a family of four. 6% live in deep poverty. That's 500,000 children in our state. Absent safety net programs, which the Republicans oppose, nearly 1.3 million more kids would be poor in our state, and that's just unacceptable. You know, I know we spent the last decade dealing with budget cuts. The year before I got to the state assembly, we were $60 billion, a deficit of $60 billion. That's almost hard to imagine. The year I got elected, we were $26 billion in deficit. Last year, or the year before last, we were sort of at neutral. You know, we didn't have a surplus, we didn't have a deficit, and that was good news. And this past year, we actually had a surplus, and for the first time in well more than a decade in California, we were able to actually invest in people and try to restore some critical programs. And we didn't go nearly far enough, and it's going to take a little bit of time, but for the first time in a decade, we were able to put some money into programs that actually help people. The budget includes about 11.9% increase to Cal Grant B Access Awards, which helps California's lowest income students pay for non-tuition things like books and other fees that they have to pay for in our colleges, universities, and community colleges. We restored about 11.3% cut to the maximum award for freshmen at private nonprofit colleges and universities. We added $142 million to the UC and the CSU budget. We added $600 million. Now, some of that $600 million for the community colleges was money we owed them from previous deficit years where we couldn't give them what we were obligated and pledged to give them. So $600 million. But the sad thing about that is while we've made those gains for education, it really doesn't hit the mark of where we were a decade ago if you look at it percentage-wise. So we have a lot of work to do. And for me, having grown up in Southwest Virginia in poverty, the thing that helped me the most was to have the opportunity to have a decent education. I was the first in my family to graduate from college. And that makes a difference in a person's lives. But that doesn't just happen miraculously. We have to have programs to help support making that possible. On some issues related, women's issues, which near and dear to my heart, reproductive rights, reproductive choice. California last year was the only state to actually advance issues as it related to reproductive rights and options for women and their families. And that's just plain wrong. We are having to fight our way back from so many things that we were able to gain as women. We also, we passed last year AB 154. It was one of my proudest moments, having worked in community clinics and with women and their families on reproductive health issues, the full range of health services, to be able to make it possible for nurse practitioners, certified nurse midwives, and physician's assistants to be able to provide first-term abortion services throughout California. More than half of our counties, 58 counties, more than half of our counties in California didn't actually have a provider to provide that service. And we know that those providers, midwives, practitioners, and physician's assistants have the capabilities, the skills, and the education and training to do that work. So that was one of the most wonderful things we were able to do. And this year, Senator Mitchell from Los Angeles, one of our stalwart leaders on so many issues, actually passed legislation and got it signed to make sure that insurance companies could not charge us for various forms of FDA-approved contraception. Meaning the insurance companies can't tell me what kind of contraception I should use. You know, you and your provider should know what that is. Insurance companies shouldn't make that determination. So the Legislative Women's Caucus has got a huge agenda for this year. We're going to continue to work on things like skills, education, and training, salaries and wage disparities and protection, pregnancy accommodations and pregnancy parental leave, nursing mother accommodations, childcare, early learning, expansion of sick leave. You know, we did that this year thanks to Lorena Gonzalez's legislation, provided sick days at the state level. There was a category of folks that got left out of that. We need to work on that. Domestic violence victims, certainly retirement savings, a huge issue for women and their families, but for everybody, actually. Staff is also researching potential bills for me in the following areas: empowering and improving midwifery services, access to birthing centers for low-income women, sexual assault on campuses, which is also an issue for our Women's Caucus, and improving victims' compensation. We have a lot of work to do on affordable housing. I think those of you from San Diego know it's one of the issues I care the most about. When I was on the city council, we got inclusionary housing. We spent upwards of $100 million one year. We got approved, and then $50 million another year for affordable housing for low-income and poor people. And in a city like San Diego, that was critically important. In our budget, our state budget, we passed $100 million for housing. Now, if you think about this, $100 million for the whole state, when actually San Diego had $100 million several years ago. We've got our work cut out for us, and some of that money is going to go for multifamily rental housing and permanent supportive housing. We know that rents are the highest. They've gone up 20% in California, and our salaries and our income has not kept up, and in fact is down 8%. We supported Proposition 41, and I want to thank you for helping support money for veterans housing. We have too many of our veterans who are coming home. A higher percentage of those are more and more are women who are coming home and who need housing. And Proposition 41 is going to take $600 million of money that voters already approved to put towards housing, permanent supportive housing, multifamily housing, homeless services housing for our veterans. And so I want to thank you for helping support that. Our Affordable Care Act, we saw 3.6 million people have expanded health coverage. Some of that was through Covered California, and some of that was through the expansion of Medi-Cal. What we're going to have to tackle this year is Medi-Cal reimbursement rates, because if we don't pay the provider at least the cost of what it takes to do the service, there will be no access. There will be no real access if we don't up those rates so that people can actually get to a provider and get the services that they need. And we in California want to make sure, and I know, I have always been someone that actually supports single payer. This is something that we need. I think healthcare, much like housing, is a right. something that we should have in the wealthiest nation in the world. But be that as it may, our administration moved forward. California embraced the Affordable Care Act, and we will see where we go with that. But the goal should be coverage for everyone. And so we're going to continue to try to make that a success in California, because we led the way and started, and we need it to be successful. And if it is successful and we're able to get there, we can look at other options for how to expand actual coverage. CalFresh, food. We have the lowest participation in the nation in that program. Hungry families, it's unacceptable in a state where we have the largest agricultural industry in the world and in the country. So we repealed a ban on CalFresh food assistance for former drug felons. We stepped in when Congress had to go through sequestration and had cuts to its budget, and we forced a loophole to be closed that put 390,000 Californians' access in jeopardy. So we wanted to make sure, that's a lot of people, 390,000. We eased eligibility by automatically enrolling households for CalFresh if they met the same income test for other services in California, like Covered California. So, bureaucracy's not very good at, kind of covering the bases together, but that's one of the issues that was really important, so that families who have needs wouldn't have to go back multiple times and fill out multiple applications. We have an EPIC caucus. I don't know if people are aware of that. Ending poverty and inequality in California. And it's a new caucus. We have 32 members last year. Holly Mitchell and Mark DeSaulnier chaired the caucus. I look forward to more members because we have a number of new members. So there's so much on the plate. I would add, I mentioned housing, I would add environmental issues. I was really thrilled. I tried to do a bill 2 years ago to give the Coastal Commission more authority to actually fine violators. Why is that important? Because people need access to the beach and to the coastline. And without access, many of our communities don't know that they can actually use parts of the beach. There are signs. I don't know if you saw some of the articles, fake signs and fake even curbs put in and to keep people from accessing our coastline. We have 1,100 miles of coastline. The Coastal Commission asked for very minimal support and regulations to actually fine violators and have them make the changes to allow access and to repair and restore some of the natural resources and habitat that were destroyed. That I couldn't get that bill through. I couldn't get it through my assembly. As it came out of the Senate, came back to the Assembly, I couldn't get it out on the second reading, so that bill died. But sometimes you can accomplish things. We got it put into the budget last year so that we were able to provide access along our coastline and give the Coastal Authority that authority. And we're going to be dealing with climate change. We're going to be dealing with sea level rise, those issues. The next big thing that may hit California could be an economic crisis based on sea level rise along our coast. I don't know that most people don't quite connect the dots and realize that we have wastewater treatment plants along the coast. We have ports. We have airports. We have land, ports, seaports. We have airports. We have all kinds of facilities along the coastline. And sea level rise is going to have a tremendously devastating economic impact in a state that prides itself on not only that economic activity from the ports, but also from tourism. Because we have protected our coastline thanks to the Coastal Commission. And so people want to come to California because we have a beautiful place to visit. So we've got our work cut out for us. One of the biggest issues that I hear from a number of members, particularly of the Environmental Caucus and of this caucus, is the issue around fracking. I heard it brought up today. We as Democrats are successful, and that's good. We're successful, but we really are a broad tent. And what that means is we have a range of philosophies in our own party. And so it has been very difficult to get legislation forward on that. Holly Mitchell, she is my favorite, you can tell, right? I keep mentioning her, but that's because she sponsors legislation that's really wonderful, progressive, and actually I am one of her biggest fans. She did a bill a couple of years ago on a moratorium on fracking that hardly got out of the first committee. So on that issue, we have our work cut out for us because the broad caucus that we have members of our own party who will not be supportive. So we've got work to do there. We've got work to do on climate change and having all of our bureaucracies come together to try to do policies that are going to help us be prepared for climate change, sea level rise. So there's a long list, although you did ask me to talk about poverty. But I will say, all of these things are interconnected. All of these things are interconnected. Californians, I believe, support so many issues, including the environment and issues that really affect quality of life. And these things affect quality of life. So we want to continue to reinvest in people. We want to continue to put resources back into housing, education, public safety where it's needed, looking at how to retool our prison system and recidivism in ways that finally make sense, where we're trying to help people who shouldn't be in prison get the assistance they need to help them be productive. And that all gets back to health care, housing, education, job training, real programs that help people be productive. And you know, I can't think of too many people that don't need a helping hand. We do subsidies and support so many things. You know, we subsidize jobs. We put tax credits out there for the aerospace industry in California. We put tax credits on the table for the film industry, which creates good jobs. You know, it is only right that we support healthcare, housing, education. Those are the things that grow our economy and make us productive. So I look forward to working with you on any and all of these issues. I'm going to other caucuses, but I also, if people have comments or questions, you're in charge of the facilitation. So
I talked to the other Toni who has said she needs to get you out of here.
Okay, 3 minutes. I'll be late.
Yes, if you'd like to ask a question, raise your hand with your credential card. And
I do, I promise. It's in my pocket. He knows it.
What?
Yeah.
All right. You are the first winner.
Okay. Toni, thank you for coming. And Proposition 45, obviously it didn't pass.
Right.
What, can that get put through the legislature? Is there anything that we can follow up? And the other quick thing is on public transportation. How can we make that money get used for actual buses and trolleys rather than trucks?
2 great questions. Proposition 45, which was Dave Jones sponsored legislation around rate setting for insurance companies. You know, one of the reasons it was on the ballot is Dave Jones worked to get signatures to put it there, because 2 years earlier it failed when Mike Feuer, who was chair of Judiciary, tried to get it through the legislature. I think that it's one of those issues that obviously still has the opportunity to pass. I think had Covered California, probably some of the members of the board of Covered California, not come out and said it's going to impact negatively our ability to set rates for our exchange in Covered California, I think that statement really confused a heck of a lot of people. And because before that, I actually think 45 was leading in the polls in terms of support. I think we're going to have to work, part of the work is going to have to be with Covered California to make sure we're not impacting negatively what we're trying to do with Covered California. But I do think we have a desire and a need to try to affect those rates. And so I think that late happening really affected negatively the outcome in terms of supporting Proposition 45.
The party didn't support it, despite the fact that the delegates had voted for it.
Okay.
Can it go through the legislature?
It can, but we're going to have to work to get the votes for that as well. And your second question was public transportation. We're working right now on options to increase. You know, California is a donor state to the federal system as it relates to resources and money. We put money, we send money to Washington, D.C., and we are a donor state. We don't get enough of that back, and we need that money for infrastructure, and we need it for operations. And some of the cap and trade money under AB 32 that we now have coming forward has been allocated, a percentage of that has been allocated for operations as well as infrastructure. But we still got a long way to go because it's not nearly enough to do what we need to do on operations for real public transit.
Can you do two more?
Sure.
Carol Lutton's 38th Assembly District. At the very core of every one of the issues that you're working on, and thank you for your hard work for all of these issues, is the whole issue of income inequality and the capture of our government by the corporate thugs and banksters. I know that they were able to take it off of the ballot this year. Are you going to be finding a way to get it back on the ballot so we have a resolution that will have California come out in support of
Are we talking Citizens United?
Yes, Citizens United, McCutcheon, all of those things, plus a constitutional amendment that many states have now already said that they are in support of these federal changes, but we got screwed because the right-wing court, the court sided with the right wing. Can you get it back on the ballot, or does it have to be on the ballot?
Well, I think, you've asked me a question I'm not sure I can answer all the pieces to. The legislature actually supported the repeal of that. I think we run into a problem because of the Supreme Court action. We have to figure out, and it's going to take some legal minds, I'm not an attorney, to figure out what our strategy needs to be now to deal with that. We need to undo that. But, anytime you give the courts the ability to rule, it takes away some of our legislative power. So we have to figure that out. There is no lack of desire and support on the part of the Democratic caucuses to deal with that issue. And as far as income inequality, let me just say I hope up and down the state, I said it at the luncheon, I hope that people are working very hard on these minimum wage issues in our communities. We have one here in San Diego. Los Angeles is trying to do it. The state will probably take another run at a higher minimum wage. But I hope that we come out strong in support of increasing minimum wage throughout our state.
Okay, one last question.
Hi, I'm Susie Shannon. I work with homeless and low-income communities in Los Angeles. And I'm really looking forward to your leadership and Kevin De Leon's. You both have been talking about poverty, which I'm so glad that I didn't have to push anyone to do that for a change. But I want to know, for years we saw CalWORKs being cut, SSI being cut, and those were two programs that you actually didn't mention, and they're really life-sustaining for many, many people in California. So I'm wondering what's the plan for CalWORKs and for SSI?
Actually, we
in the upcoming
increased
budget?
CalWORKs. I can't believe it's not on my list. We increased CalWORKs. One of the things I think we have to tackle this year, and it's all going to come down to money and budget stuff, but there's enough members of the legislature who support this, increasing the maximum family grant, which was a huge issue during this last budget process when we were trying to figure out, and part of what we did is we only had so much money that we could spend over and above without risking a governor's veto, and both Darrell Steinberg and I tried to work with the governor, so we put money towards in-home health services, trying to restore cuts to in-home health services, which is huge because it affects low-income people in their homes. But maximum family grant is something we're going to have to look at. We did increase CalWORKs, but there's probably a way we can expand that even more. So we're trying to do some bite-sized chunks of restoring some of these services because we know that we're going to have a discussion with our governor when it comes to these issues.
Thank you very much.